everyone, and welcome to episode 4 of Femme de la Creme, where we talk to inspiring women at the top of their fields about all things ranging from female empowerment to body positivity. I'm so excited to share this episode with you and this fascinating conversation with one of the most inspirational and fascinating women in my life. I've never spoken about it publicly before, but I have struggled with body image issues and an eating disorder for around 12 years now. I developed it straight out of high school, and I've struggled with my weight ever since. And this woman came into my life and has changed everything. She is a transformational wellness coach, a keynote speaker, author, EFT trainer, and I would say an expert in intuitive eating, disordered eating, and healing the relationship with yourself in order to feel lighter. Without further ado, I am so honored to introduce you to Miss Sally THIBAULT. Hi, Sally.
Hi, Cassidy.
Hello. Now, we are very familiar with each other. I have been working with you as my wellness coach, and among many other things, you've helped me with coaching for years now. And we've known each other since I was very small. Is that right?
Yes, known you since you were in grade 2, I think, Cassidy.
Yes, that is right. I don't know if that's a good thing or not, but I'm sure I terrorized your house many times.
My great memories of you and my daughter Alyssa are the Spice Girls dancing in the living room. And really nothing much has changed. You still sing and dance. We could see the talent way back then.
That's true. That's true. We did have a Spice Girls club. I think we should bring it back, maybe. Well, when we first met, though I was very young, I do remember my mum used to attend your aerobics classes, and they were the thing, the place to be where we were on the Gold Coast. They were absolutely packed. And so my earliest memories of you were you being the picture of health, the perfect body, and like you had everything under control, body, eating, everything. It was like you inspired all the women around you. And then it's so interesting that now you've gotten into this line of work that's about intuitive eating and tapping and dealing with people like myself who have eating and body issues. Just wondering if you could share with us a little bit about your journey on what brought you to this work and where you are today.
Yeah, thanks, Cassidy. Yeah, it's funny you say, I remember you as having it all together, and I'm trying to stop myself from laughing because, it's amazing how it looks. I had a very disordered way of eating most of my life. Started from when I was about 15, which, of course, that's when many girls start to take on disordered eating. I had been very sporty as a child. And as a teenager, started to put on weight, and it was comments that were made to me. Oh, you can see that you're getting a bit hippie, or oh, you've got legs like the rest of the family. And so I began this really disordered way of eating. Now, I began in the fitness industry back in sort of late 1970s when it was really big deal, and we had lycra leotards, and the music was loud, and I just loved it, but really my driving passion, when I'm truly honest with myself, was that I taught 4 aerobic classes a day and still ran up to 6 kilometers a day because I was terrified of putting on weight.
Really?
And I lived on rice crackers, low-fat cottage cheese. We took the skin off everything, and everything was this huge competition about how we looked and what we weighed. And really and honestly, as much as I love the industry, love the fitness industry, absolutely love what I did, it was all about my body and my body image. And yes, I looked the part, but I had a very fractured relationship with food. And as I got older and had children, my key element, the thing that really sort of drove me to heal my own relationship with food and was my daughters. I didn't want them growing up the same way. I didn't want them to grow up with a very disordered way and thinking that being thin was the way that to happiness, and if you were thin, you were desirable and people liked you. And I just wanted all that to stop.
It's a fascinating journey because, like you said, I definitely would never have guessed. We have spoken about that before, and it was a huge shock to me to find out that you were so at war with yourself behind the scenes. And I definitely think that I myself, being a dance and fitness instructor now, I know that for me, there's always that part in your mind that walking into a dance class or the fitness studio, you feel like you have to fit a certain mold to be there. Is that how you felt when you were teaching? It
Oh,
was just...
absolutely. And you know, because I'm short, I'm only 5'1", and most of my counterpart instructors are all tall and had long legs, and I always felt I wasn't good enough. So I thought, if I'm thin enough and I work harder at everything, then I'll be as good as them. But I never felt as good as them. I never felt that I had the look, you know. And in those days, it was very much, we had, you know, kind of lycra leotards and you know, really high waist, you know, that we pulled the sides up really, so you had long legs. And it's really difficult not to have a body issue when you're standing in front of 30 people every day in lycra leotards. you just know that you don't have the look. So, you know, I would spend hours, as I said, 4 classes a day. I mean, and then kind of, you know, I was just so pedantic and religious about my food, you know. Back in those days, it was no fat, and we really challenged ourselves. It was like, what did you eat today? And what did you eat today? And oh, did you have that? And we were so focused on, and it wasn't health. That was the key. It wasn't about health. It was about dieting. And it just became to the point where I thought, I can't do this anymore. I was losing. When I think back now and think how many hours in my day I wasted on worrying about how thin I was. I mean, I remember the day I got married, and I was so determined to be 45 kilos the day I was married. I was so determined. And I was 47 kilos. And oh, God, I failed. I mean, I still remember that day thinking, oh, God, if I'd just been 2 kilos lighter. I mean, I look back now and think, 47 kilos, good grief, blown me over by the fast north wind, you know, like the Good Witch. It was nothing of me. And it just wasn't a healthy relationship. And because of that, my relationship with myself and others was impacted.
Oh, I can imagine. Absolutely. And it's funny, I can totally relate to with your wedding, 2 kilos. Like, I'm sure you were in absolutely tiny at the time. And I know that not only every performance I've done, but every single photo that I look back on in years, I can tell you how I felt about my body that day. And it's always completely wrong, isn't it? We never
Absolutely.
see what we think everyone else sees.
I mean, I look back on those days when I thought, oh, I'm not, you know, I'm not the weight. And I remember, as you would too, you go back and look, I thought I was fat, for goodness sake. What was I? And we get this really, it's called body dysmorphia. We don't see what others see. I can remember people saying to me, oh, my mother in particular, say, you're very thin. And I go, oh gosh, no, Mum, look at this. You know, I just need to get rid of this. And you know, what she was seeing and what I was seeing were two entirely different things. And I know at one stage they were very worried about me having an eating disorder. So mine was bulimia, and that took me a long time. And as I said before, really the turning point was I just didn't want to pass this on to my children, that my girls in particular. I didn't want them living that life of thinking everything was around your weight. It's just so far removed from actually what anybody wants. It's really women. We do it to ourselves, because most men go, oh, have you put on weight? Most men don't even care.
Yeah.
We're the ones that judge ourselves, and we're the ones that judge other women.
Absolutely. It's so true. That's where a lot of my, I guess, past trauma comes from, is comments from other women, not comments from other men.
Yeah. And this competition we have as women, you know, needs to stop. And because we're so judgmental of ourselves. That's the problem. We judge ourselves, and so in turn, to sort of push away that pain of judging ourselves, we judge others. You know, you still see people, sometimes you'll catch people looking at someone who's a bit overweight in a coffee shop, and you'll catch people with kind of a bit of a, you know, should you be having that? You know, like it's just that sort of those darts of judgment that can really hurt somebody, because that person knows you're judging them. They can see the look.
Absolutely. And we discussed something recently that this kind of touches on, which is people who are overweight, that doesn't mean that they're necessarily happy being that way. And it shows a lot about a person when they look at another person and judge them and think that they enjoy being that size and go, oh, what a slob, what a, you know, and people don't really understand what people go through, because I know myself, sure, it looks like I'm happy and I'm confident, but inside my head, 24 hours a day, there is a lot of pain. And there are people who are much larger than I, they would love to be thin, but it's a real battle. So I'm intrigued to know, what was it that helped you come out of this thinking? Was it intuitive eating?
Oh, absolutely. And in the new book that I've written, I talk about this question my husband asked me. And you know, how the universe conspires to make you change. I happen to marry somebody who's super thin, never had a weight issue, eats whatever he likes. So not fair, right? It's so not fair. And he was a great one. He's French Canadian, and so he loves things with butter and cream and pastas and bacon, and his favorite meal used to be, we lived in Canada for a period of time, was a prime rib of beef with all the gravy. You have to have all the homemade, you know, the gravy from the meat, and then a baked potato that you cut in quarters. You put butter on top, wait for the butter to melt, then you put sour cream on top, lots of it, and then chives and bacon bits. You know, good heavens, I don't know where they had to make those bacon bits, because they weren't real anyway. But anyway, but we'd go out for dinner and I would have, oh no, thank you, I'll just have grilled fish with some broccoli or zucchini. Oh, no butter, just steamed. Thank you very much. You know, and you know, when you're kind of in that frame of mind where you're eating healthy, you get kind of very supercilious, very kind of you know, thinking you're rather, you know, a superior because you're eating it. Anyway, one night he said to me, we'd had the normal meal, and he said, "You want some sour cream on your broccoli?" And I went, "No." And he said, "Why?" I said, "Oh, for God's sake," you know, roll my eyes, because it's fattening. And he got a teaspoon out, and he reached in with a teaspoon into the tub of sour cream and held it up and said, "How could a teaspoon of sour cream put on a pound of weight?"
Wow.
And it was that defining moment, because I went, first of all, I went, oh, as if you'd know, you know, because you don't want to be proven wrong, especially with something I was an expert in, apparently. And but it was one of those moments. It's, you know, I think back on it now, it's like the curtains parted, the light came on, the angels started singing, and it was like, that's right.
Yeah.
He's right. I had become so disordered in my eating. I thought everything I ate put on weight. Of course it did, because that's what I believed. And that's when I started, I think, I was reading a book by Louise Hay at the time, back in the days when that was sort of, you know, You Can Heal Your Life. It was one of the first books out about, affirmations and changing the way you think. And I thought, well, if she can cure cancer, maybe I could cure this issue I have around food. And so I got some old business cards out of that Jerry drawer at his office, and wrote on the back, "I now allow myself to eat anything I want. What does my body really need?" And I wrote them on these cards, and I put them everywhere. I put them in my purse. I stuck them on the inside of the shower, so I could say them in the shower. I put them on the dashboard of the car. And I say about 20 or 30 times a day, "I now allow myself to eat anything I want. What does my body really want? I now allow myself to eat anything I want. What does my body really need?" I just said it. And after about 6 weeks, I started to notice a difference. I started to notice that I actually could feel what I really wanted. I was really connecting to my body. I was getting out of my head, because my head had all the script in it. Fat grams, calories, you know, we call them macros, you know, all those things that you shouldn't eat. All the rules were in my head. They were in my body. And what dieters do is disconnect your head and your body. That's how we do it, because you have to eat some pretty awful food if you're on a diet. You have to put yourself through starvation if you're on a diet. Yes. The only way you can cope is to disconnect the head from the body and totally deny what it is you really need. And it was that process. So that was way back in the 80s. And it was really the beginning for me of changing the way I ate. It took a little while, took a long time before, and we're going to talk about it in a minute. I had EFT tapping, but it took a long time for me to change that way of thinking, to become somebody now I say can eat anything they want and become quite comfortable with it. But it really is about giving yourself permission to truly begin to listen to your body. And those who struggle with weight and body image are so caught up in the good and the bad, what I should and shouldn't be doing. It's just this script that runs in our heads. And when I'm
Yeah.
working with people now, that's the hardest thing for them to do. So let go of the rules and get really in tune with your body.
It's absolutely that good and bad thinking, like this food is good food, bad food. That's one of the hardest things for me to unlearn, because I know that for me, I always had, I would say, issues with body dysmorphia from dancing. So when I was younger, I always thought I was a lot larger than I was. So looking back at photos of myself in school, I was like, oh my gosh, I was not big at all, but people would refer to me as the big girl, but that was just because I was tall. I misconstrued it. However, the first time I actually tried to diet was I was doing my first professional performing job outside of school, and I went and signed up for Weight Watchers, and they said to me, oh, you've only got 5 kilos to be able to lose and you would be underweight. And I was like, yeah, I'll only lose 5 kilos. And so they still let me sign up. And, you know, I was fit and healthy for a normal girl, but for a dancer, I still
Yes.
definitely could have lost that 5 kilos to be a dancer, as we say. But for me, I had never controlled my eating before. I didn't necessarily eat super healthy. I ate healthy with my family, but I did snack a lot. But I danced a lot as well. So it sort of balanced out. Then with going into Weight Watchers was the first time I adopted a diet mentality. And I was planning out my foods, and I was eating foods I liked, but it was all counting calories, counting points, blah, blah, blah. And it became a little bit too much for me I think I was a 17-year-old girl. I just turned 18. I was like trying to make it work, and then it all just became a bit too hard. And I lost 2.5 kilos very quickly. And then I gained, I think it was 15 kilos in a matter of a couple of months, you know? So, and then ever since then has been when I have struggled. And I've only just since working with you come to understand that that is actually something in your animal brain. Could you explain a little bit more about why dieting does not work, and what it does to the brain that actually makes not everyone, but a lot of people crazy around food?
Oh, absolutely. And it all comes down to restriction. You know, Albert Einstein's theory of relativity is for every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. And I often say he didn't widen that term of reference enough to say for every diet, there's an equal and opposite binge just waiting to happen. You can't stay in restriction. Simply impossible. Our brains are wired to think negative. Unfortunately, we think negatively, and very difficult for us to think positive. So we have about 30,000 or more thoughts per day. Of that, 95% are exactly the same thoughts you had yesterday, and of that, 80%, 80 to 85% are actually negative. So the brain, negative thoughts are easier. It takes less energy for the brain to think negatively than it does to think positively. So when it comes to restriction, what you're doing is telling your brain, I'm not good enough. My body's not good enough. So there's this negative thought processes happening all the time. You place restriction on top of all of that. It's impossible to stick with. You just can't. We're not designed to do that. You know, for every diet, there's an equal and opposite binge waiting to happen. Studies out of Harvard University, it was a great study out of Harvard University that showed over 95% of people, might have been a little bit higher, might have been 97, 98% of people who diet will gain the weight back within a year, usually more. So you just can't stay with that restriction model. And what happens in the body when you restrict, and it's how the prisoners of war were able to survive in the concentration camps. So when you restrict food, what happens is that your mitochondria in the muscles, our metabolism slows down. So if you eating restrictively and it slows down, it's doing that for survival. That's how the prisoners of war were able to survive for so long on very little food. So every time you diet, you're slowing your metabolism. So when you can't stand it anymore, when you think this is not working, my brain's going, I'm no good anyway, I can never stick to a diet, there's nothing, the chatting going on. And you start eating, your metabolism slow down. It's going to hold on to the food because your body's saying she might do this again. We got to hang on to all this food in case she does this again. So you come off a diet, you start to eat like a normal person. And how many times have you said, it feels like everything I eat puts on weight? That's the way the body works. It's working in survival. So by letting go of that diet mentality, retraining your body to eat, allow yourself to eat anything you want with no restrictions, starts to make the chemical changes in the brain that don't want you reaching for foods after you're full.
Right.
Because you know what's really interesting about food is it's one of the only things that we have to have. We have to have food.
Yes.
And for people who are dieting, it becomes almost like the way an alcoholic works. You can't quit cold turkey. Doesn't work like that. And so as you diet, you're literally trying to quit food cold turkey. You're going to want more. That's just the way it is. So that whole thing about restriction is the worst thing we can do to ourselves, and especially for anybody that has any body image, dancers, as you know, I have a daughter who's a dancer too, and that industry is so hard on girls who aren't this stick figure thin, because they naturally like them, many of them. But for the girls who are normal body weight and shape, that's a very difficult industry to be in, and you're constantly being reinforced by that all the time. So where we place ourselves is that negative feedback coming about, I'm not good enough, I'll have to restrict food, and it just builds on itself all the time.
Yeah, it really does. I mean, my experience is it's almost daily that I'll have strangers come up to me and feel they can comment on my body. And in my line of work, it's just open for discussion every day. Like, you put up a photo and you're going to get comments about your body. So unfortunately, social media doesn't help. But we could talk about that for hours.
Yeah, but interestingly enough, we are the first, so that the turn of the 20th century, the early 1900s, back to the, it was actually considered women who were overweight were actually considered far more sexually attractive, far more sexually attractive to be overweight, because if you were thin, it meant you were poor.
Yeah.
So it wasn't until the change, it happened in the 1920s. So we went through the Great Depression, the World Wars, and it wasn't until then that it began to look like, the flappers and the tight little skirts and tight little clothing. That was only then that thinness was attractive. But if you go back and look in the 1400s, 1500s, 1600s, all the women, the wealthy women, were buxom, big women. That was what was considered sexually attractive. That was what was considered to be intelligent, because usually they were not working in the fields. So it's only this sort of since the turn of the century, and I'm talking centuries, I'm talking about the 1900s, that this became a thing. But even into the 1940s and 50s, you look at Marilyn Monroe, that voluptuous woman was considered attractive. So once again in the 60s, it started again. A woman called Jeannie Shrimpton showed up at the Melbourne Cup with a miniskirt, and there it started all over again. So it flows and ebbs and tides, and we have bought into this whole business that thinness equates to healthiness, and that's not the truth. It's simply not the truth.
Absolutely. And I think that's definitely a misconception, because a lot of the people that I know that are thin are not necessarily doing it in a healthy way. And I know a lot of the times that I've been very thin, I've not been doing healthy things either. I've done everything you can do. I've done diet pills, all that sort of stuff. I've done whatever I can to control my weight. But it always comes back. Like you said, there's always an opposite and equal binge and a blowback.
Yeah.
But I would like to introduce everyone a little bit into one of the methods that you use to help with the cravings. When I'm getting an urge to binge, or I'm struggling to deal with my emotions, you've taught me a fantastic tool called tapping, or EFT. Could you let people know a little bit about how EFT works, especially with binging?
Yes, absolutely. Well, EFT, or emotional freedom techniques, we often call it tapping, is a blend between cognitive behavioral therapy, talk therapy, and acupuncture. So you say how you're feeling while tapping on the meridian points around the body. And as you're tapping, what you're doing is lowering cortisol levels. So people who binge eat for a reason, to stuff down a pain, try to overcome anxiety, feelings of not being happy, unworthiness. That's why we choose food. Food's a comfort. And food should be comfort. It should be joyful and comfortable. But we get this swayed thing about food. And for many of us, some people choose cigarettes, some choose alcohol, some take drugs, some eat food. Same thing. So what we reach for is something that's going to take away that feeling of pain, anxiety for a moment. When we tap using emotional freedom technique and we're saying how we're feeling, MRI imaging has shown that it actually impacts on a certain part of the brain and calms the central nervous system. So it takes the stress away. So simply when you take the anxiety away by using tapping, I feel anxious, I'm feeling stressed, I'm hurt, whatever that feeling is, you're tapping while you're saying it. The cortisol levels are dropping, so you're able to think more clearly.
Yes.
You're not reaching for something to calm that pain like that. And that's what we're doing when we binge eat. We're reaching for something to stuff down that emotion. And there's certain types of food that we reach for. You know, if we're feeling angry and we can't speak our truth, we often reach for crunchy foods like crisps and chips and crackers. We want crunchy foods. If we're feeling like, oh, life is just so hard, I just want someone to love me, we'll often reach for things like creamy chocolates, chocolate with cream in the middle of it, because that just calms again that feeling of, of nobody likes me. This food is really calming and soothing to me. Bread, we often reach for bread when it's all too hard. We reach for bread when it's like, I just want to go back to simpler times, because mum used to make pastas, any of those things, rice even, it was reminding you of much simpler times. And cheese, interestingly enough, has an amino acid in it called tryptophan, and what it does is it helps you feel better. So it has a calming method on the brain, and that creaminess raises the endorphin. So people who reach for cheese and crackers a lot, like they'll often sit down and have cheese and crackers, it's that trying to feel better. Like, I've had a really bad day, but I'm crunching into this cracker and I'm having the cheese, which is lifting my endorphins, and all of a sudden I feel better. The only problem is oftentimes you don't feel better till the whole lot of the brie wheel has gone, and then you go, how did that happen?
Absolutely. And you can be like me, who does it all the time, and then you get to the end of it and you go, and I'm allergic to lactose.
Now, see, here's the interesting thing. What you just said is really interesting, because when your anxiety levels are high, your stress levels are high, you don't think clearly. So the blood flow actually leaves the frontal lobes of the brain to go to the arms and the legs. To take us back to the claw and fang jungle days, when you were stressed, you needed to do something: flight, fight, or freeze. Now, we don't do that anymore. So we get stressed and we just sit with it. So, but the cortisol's pumping, the adrenaline's pumping, the blood flow's leaving the frontal lobes, going to the arms and the legs. We just don't think clearly. So we're reaching for food, and then you get to the end and go, oh, I'm allergic to that. But at the meantime, it's a little bit like, it's a little like, we're feeding that which makes us feel better, even though we know it's going to make us feel worse in the end. But for that moment, we're looking for something to calm the pain, ease the stress. And that's where tapping creates the disruptor, calling it this disruptor. So when you've got those sort of negative thoughts that keep going, I'm fat, I'm no good, I'm no good, I'm never, blah, 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 that goes on all day. When you tap and you talk about that, you're creating the disruptor, because the cortisol level's dropping, and you get a different, you go, oh, well, hold on, I'm not feeling so stressed now. And we always try and get to the root cause, like the people, words, events of your past that are causing you to be triggered. And when you understand that, you can eat food and enjoy it like everybody else does. But if you live in that restriction, if you're stressed and you're eating that food, taking away that food is not going to solve the issue. It's
Absolutely not.
As you know, you and I talk about this all the time. I am so against dieting, any form of restriction, because all it does is once again set up that you're not good enough.
Absolutely. And you always fail, and it always hurts so much more when you, in quotes, fail. And intuitive eating does not mean you're not eating healthy. It just means that nothing's off limits.
Off limits, yes.
And we definitely often talk about that, which we'll get to soon, about all these misconceptions. However, I do have to personally attest that your tapping methods have helped me tremendously, because I am someone who always keeps everything inside, and I'm always the strong one. And, you know, and people who don't have disordered eating problems don't understand that there's just this intensity in your head. There's these voices in your head, and they start quiet, they get louder and louder, and that there's that intensity that even when you know you don't want to grab food, or, you know, it'd be like someone who doesn't want to have a cigarette, you end up just being like, I just don't want to feel this attention anymore. And you do it just to relieve that pressure. And tapping really does save you from that. And I found it's worked for me in performance anxiety as well. It's been life-changing. Yeah. So I thank you very much.
Oh, you're welcome. I mean, it makes the whole intuitive eating process so much easier. You know, it doesn't take the months it took me to get it by saying things over and over again, which we now know doesn't work anyway. But the tapping just puts it all literally on steroids. It hyper speeds everything. And the beautiful thing about EFT, you just do it. Like, you don't need to go anywhere. It's at your fingertips. You can do it by yourself. And that's what I love, because I think that's one of the things that people who have disordered eating or issues around body shape, they're already feeling disempowered. So if you've got a tool that makes you feel empowered to change, whether that's performance anxiety, stress, any food issues, it's like, oh, I can solve this. It gives you one more tool in your toolbox to say, I can heal myself. And that's just so empowering.
Absolutely. And it's funny that you mention feeling empowered, because I find the hardest thing for me in my struggles with my body is the shame of people thinking that you're lazy. And someone for me who's a perfectionist, and, you know, I'm such a diligent hard worker, and I just can't seem to get myself right when it comes to my body. You know, it's always been a big source of strength for me. And people always say to me, oh, Cass, why don't you just lose weight? Like, why don't you just stop eating those foods, blah, blah, blah. What would you say to someone who's never experienced disordered eating about, I guess, what people who do have disordered eating go through? Is there anything that you would say to combat someone who said, well, why don't they just stop those, like, cold turkey?
Yeah, you know, look, the problem is that the people who have suffered disordered eating, they can't stop eating food. You can't stop eating food. You know, it's around us all the time. And when you make comments to somebody who's really struggling with this issue, all you're doing is adding to the shame. You're adding to the problem. And I know, you know, as a parent, that can be sometimes really difficult, because I have a son who's spending way too much enjoying his married life and the beautiful foods of Montreal. And there's a part of me that wants to say something, but that's not my job. And I think people have to realize it's not your job to tell somebody else what to do with their body. That's not your job. And when somebody has issues around eating, it's like everything else. They have to heal by themselves. You have to give them the tools to feel confident to heal on that. And I think we have to stop looking at this as a diet. You know, I worked in the fitness industry for a long time. And part of the reason I left it was because of what the messages the fitness industry was sending. Well, if you don't come to class and if you can't, you know, lose those 5 kilos, there's something wrong with you. It's all about motivation. It's all about discipline. All about willpower. And that's rubbish. It's just rubbish. You know, there's a lot more. To me, it's the reason why we do certain things. And those with disordered eating, and, you know, my hand goes up as well, food was the way we dealt with our emotion, purely and simply. And until we can get to the point where we're able to deal effectively with the pain and the hurt, and you know, we keep going deep all the time. You've been fantastic to work with, because you just continually will go deep. When you can find that thing, that makes all the difference. But it's like you've got to unwind years, and you're unfortunately in an industry where body is such an issue.
Yes.
You know, just watching Adele at the moment and all the things that are being said about her, for God's sake.
Oh my gosh. Yes, and every diet is claiming she's on it.
I mean, I just get, this is and I heard a wonderful statement about her the other day. It said she is an ordinary woman with a wonderful talent.
Yes.
She's an ordinary woman with an extraordinary talent. Whether she's 500 kilos or 47 kilos makes no difference to her talent. And
Yes.
she's reached a point in her life where she felt that's what she needed to do, and that's her business, nobody else's. But the media picks up with that and runs. Now Adela's looking too thin, and now what's going on in Adele's life because she's got an eating disorder. It's like, oh, for goodness sake. The media perpetrates this rubbish, when what we need to be doing with anybody that has disordered eating is finding their gifts and talents and allowing them to express through those. Because the biggest challenge for many people with disordered eating is their self-worth.
Yes.
It all comes down to value and worth, how we value ourselves and how we honor our self-worth. And you saying something to somebody, I was trying to shame, all that it does, it makes it worse.
It makes it so much worse. Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, and it's about supporting that person. You have to support that. And I know it's difficult because the media narrative is thinness. That's the media narrative. But, you look at some of the big guru fitness people in the world, they're naturally that shape anyway.
Yes.
They're natural. I mean, I struggle with this. I'm 5'1" and I come from a family we have weight issues in our family, all of us. It's just a thing in our family. All my family kind of get together and say, where did this come from? But it's a thing.
Yeah.
But I'm never going to be 5'6". I'm 5'1". And I want to be the best 5'1" shape I can be. And that does not mean 47 kilos, let me tell you.
Yes.
That means I'm healthy, I'm energetic, I feel strong. I'm focused, I can tackle, big projects. I can walk to the beach. I can do, 20 push-ups in a row. To me, that's the measure of strength. And we have to stop talking in terms of thinness. That is not, as we said before, that is not a measure of health.
Absolutely.
And right now, around the world, people have to be focused on their immune system. You have to be looking at foods that, reduce inflammation. You have to be filling your body full of good, healthy food wherever it comes from. That's where the focus needs to be. And thinness doesn't mean your immune system's good.
No, absolutely. And it's funny how you bring up Adele, because I think she definitely, it's created such uproar, because she was people made her almost like people would say about Marilyn Monroe. Marilyn was huge. She was a size 16. She was not. She was freaking tiny. I've seen her dress. Her waist was minuscule. She just had proportions. But with Adele, she was the poster child for a lot of women that, oh, well, it's okay for me to eat what I want and be whatever size I want, because look at Adele. She's the best-selling artist in the world, and now they've lost that. So that's put them in uproar. Some people aren't fans because they can't look at her anymore like that. But it brings us to this body positivity movement. And I always say I'm like an advocate for body positivity, but I don't mean that. People often misconstrue that as, oh, well, you're an advocate for it's okay to be fat. And that's not the case. We always talk about body confidence and building body confidence, because the hardest thing for me has always been, growing up as a dancer, growing up as a performer, pushed on me from day one was, you have to be a certain shape and size, and that's the way you must wish to look. And the hardest thing for me has been to figure out, well, what do I want to look like? What is healthy for my body? What is sexy in my mind? And for me, fit but curvy is what I find sexy. And I never realized that until we started working together.
But it's so true. I mean, I'd give anything to have that curvy shape. I mean, I'd love to have that curvy. I don't have that curvy shape. That's not my shape. And that I think you put that, you nail it. It's not your shape, know, and this image we have, and that's perpetrated by, the fashion industry in particular, where everybody has to look like a coat hanger. And you see those girls, I mean, they've got their bony shoulders and they're a size 6 or a size 4 or a size 2 dripping wet. They're a bony coat hanger. The clothes have to look good on the coat hangers. We know the issues with eating disorders within the modeling industry, for instance, and what those girls go through, and the terrible, where they actually are, whether they're a certain weight, is whether they get a job. I mean, it's so disordered. But, you know, I'm never going to be 6 foot tall. I mean, that's just not where I'm going to be. But that's the fashion industry has created this perfect look. And you talk about body positivity, and I want to talk about this a little bit too, the confidence. That is not standing in front of a mirror saying, I love my body. Doesn't work. There's not a woman I know alive who can stand in the body. And men do it all the time. You know, I look great, and off they go. They don't care what they look like. But women go, oh, and I think that's a real misnomer, that we force women to think they have to love their body. I don't think you accept it. You accept, this is my body shape, and I'm going to make it the best body shape I can. But loving your body puts so much pressure on people. And it's really important, you know, for me, for getting underneath all that is understanding how you, and Brene Brown calls it, courageous authenticity. For you to be courageously, authentically yourself. And authenticity is a verb, not a noun. It's a doing thing. It's something where you show up every day as your authentic self. That's attractive to me. That's, to me, is when a woman can show up as her absolutely courageously authentic self. And that's something we do every single day. We choose to not go down that track of being sold, you know, I say, you know, sold and told what we should look like. Instead I'm courageously, authentically myself. And my health is my responsibility. I choose to deal with my emotions in a positive way. And I'm not going to stuff them down any longer. I'm going to speak my truth. To me, that's true body confidence and body positivity.
Yes.
The shift comes, it's not what your body looks like. It's what you express through it, the who you are. You know, I see this all the time, and you probably too. There are people who walk into a room, and I know I've seen you do this too. You walk into a room and people go, oh, you're just drawn to you because you're walking with this kind of energy, this vibe. I mean, that to me is what we all should be doing. Because you do that when you are 100% authentically yourself.
Right.
Now, you and I have talked about this, a study that was done at the Heart Math Institute in Los Angeles, and they measured heart resonance. Do you know how if you walk into a room and people have been arguing and they stop talking, you go, whoa, you can actually feel the energy?
Yes.
When your heart resonance, what you think and believe about yourself resonates out about 3 feet from you, about a meter. So people will say things like, wow, you look so good today. What they're picking up on is how you're feeling. They're picking up on that energy. So you can you can be the size you are, you can be all dressed up, but if you don't like yourself, if you're upset about something, if you're carrying anxiety, if you're feeling shame because you're overweight, that's the energy they pick up too.
Yes.
So it's whatever energy you push out, that's positive, body positivity and body confidence to me. It starts with your heart.
Absolutely.
And, you know, I'm a great believer, you know, that what I work with is we release the pain of the people, the words and events of our past to give the body permission to release the weight that no longer serves you emotionally first and then physically. So when you learn to release the weight that no longer serves you, because we have weight for a reason, it makes us feel safe normally, protected. And when we get to the bottom of that and the weight, the body will let it go. It's got nothing to do with food because when you feel good about yourself, you're not trying to stuff down the emotion. So it's like this constant, you know, I now allow myself to eat anything I want. And now allow myself to eat anything I want, you know, not what I need, not what I'm told. No. What does my body really feel like? And that's that connection to the head and the heart. No fat grams, no micro, none of that. And then the next part is I choose to honor those messages without judgment. Choose to honor those messages without judgment. And the last one is, well, how does this make my body feel? Because your body will tell you, and you talk about, I'm allergic to dairy, shouldn't lactose. Your body will tell you.
Guilty.
Tells you, doesn't it? Yeah, tells you. And you go, oh. And then the choice becomes not what I should and shouldn't eat, becomes how do I want to feel?
Absolutely.
Because if you don't have that body positivity and body confidence, you don't connect with the feeling that food is. But when you're feeling really good about yourself, you go, you know what, I don't want to eat that cheese because I know the next day I'm going to feel horrible. I'm like that with gluten and dairy.
Yes.
And it just becomes easy for me. I don't want to feel like that tomorrow. So it's not I'm not restricting, it's a choice. I will eat sometimes, and somebody's made a really nice sourdough bread and you can smell it as you're walking past the bakery, you're like, oh, whatever.
Yes. I can deal with one day.
One day. And the next day you go, oh, I knew I shouldn't have done that. But that's what that's all about. It's not about, it's like get really in touch with how food makes your body feel, and your body will always give you the messages if you learn. And how can you be intuitive and trust yourself in anything else if the one thing you can't trust your own body on, or your own self, is food?
Absolutely.
But you see, that denial, that constant pulling apart, means that you can't listen to your intuition. You turn it off.
Yes.
So, and we have this wonderful innate, GPS. It's called our intuition. And I often call this the last frontier for many women. It's like, if you can solve this, everything else in your life just flows into action, and vice versa. And often when you put everything else in your life, being courageously authentic, this goes away as well. So it works in conjunction. It just so happens for people like us, it happens to be food is our thing.
Yeah, that's the vice. And it's funny because I had always lived with this message of like, I'll love myself when I lose weight, oh, blah, blah, blah. And now I was always putting out that energy, like you said, that resonance. And I would always be like, why don't my friends, like no one else I know has anyone constantly coming up to them saying, oh, you've gained weight. Oh, you look fat. Oh, such a pretty face. What a shame you're so fat. It happened to me. Like I could write books on thousands of stories, but it was the energy I was putting out. And I would react so emotionally to it. And our work together has helped me to not go and cry my eyes out and then, hide in the cupboard and filled with shame. But now your work has actually helped me to feel a lot more confident in myself, a lot more sane. It's given me a lot of my power back, and it's made me feel a lot lighter, which interestingly enough is the title of your new book, which I have to share about this personality quiz that you've got on your website as an intro to your book, which has been a game changer for me, as you know. Unbelievable. Just the last couple of weeks, I took this test, and it's a 4 personality test. Am I right?
That's right.
That's right. And my personality was, you can share,
was the peacemaker. Now, what was really interesting when you told me, I went, I would never have picked, that makes all the sense in the world. Like it was just literally, I would not have picked you as that, but then, it made all the sense in the world. It just, and I'm sure you must have felt it, because I went, that's why she does this. And that's why this is such a big issue, because a peacemaker needs security in their lives. They have a strong need for security, and they're very loyal, dependable people. And so a peacemaker often keeps everything, they always have, very close to their heart. But interesting enough, peacemakers are usually the ones who really struggle with emotional eating, because they often don't feel comfortable to speak their truth. They're the people pleaser. That's what they call peacemakers. They want everybody to be happy. I'll just do whatever you want to make you happy, and I'll not say anything. And because peacemakers don't like confrontation at all.
No.
So they will go over the top to make sure everybody else is happy. And then they're very depleted usually. Peacemakers are often depleted in energy because they're so busy making sure everybody, and is everybody happy? And especially in your career, someone who's a performer, that would be playing in your mind. Am I doing enough? Like that's that detailed perfection, that attention to detail is very important for you. And as a peacemaker, you take a long time to make a decision. You take a while, but when you do, it's like I'm locked into that decision now. But that was a really interesting part. So there's 4 aspects. One is the achiever, and achievers are people who have a strong need for self-recognition. So they're people who like to keep achieving. They're always setting goals for themselves, always doing something. However, they're also the most critical and self-judgmental people in the whole of this personality profile. So they're perfectionists, and they will hold themselves back. They won't start to do something. They need to be achieving. They need to see, they'll set a big, huge goal that's often unrealistic. And when they don't achieve it, they turn inwards on themselves.
Really?
The socializers, they're our people. They love to party. They're great people to have at an event. People love them because they're great conversationalists. They're good networkers. They get their energy from social interaction. So this lockdown we've been in has been particularly hard on my socializers because they're really struggling with this whole thing. But their biggest issue is they can set a goal to do something, but if a social event comes up, they go, oh, sorry, I'm off to that. They'll have all these, I'm going to eat really well this week. Oh, someone's asked me for coffee and cake, and away they go. That's their biggest challenge. And also socializers too they are also people pleasers, and they want to make people happy, so they can often not speak their truth as well. And the last one are competitors, and they're the people who have strong need for self-fulfillment. And they're usually very driven people, hardworking, very often don't have a great deal of good people skills. They're difficult people to work with because they have ideas coming to them all hours of the day and night and can't understand why other people, like peacemakers, need time to think things through. Their big issue is stress. They're often the types of people that are either so health conscious that they drive everybody crazy because they're so particular, or the totally opposite, and they just eat everything. Nothing's off limits to them. Stress is their biggest issue. They often have issues around heart issues, gut issues, anything that's sort of that tension-driven issues, because they are constantly wanting to go to the next level. It's the good thing about the personality profile is what it does is help, as you did, helps you understand why you do things.
Oh, blows your mind even. I just never saw myself as that. And it really has changed everything for me, because now ever since I did the test, I'm looking at everything I do going, I am a people pleaser. Oh my God, I am everything I say. Like so many things that come out of my mouth, it's keep the waters still, don't rock the boat. And it has really helped me to understand why I do things. And like they say, awareness is the first step to moving forward, isn't it? And acceptance.
Absolutely. And I mean, I just love it from my perspective, because when I'm working with clients now, if I understand their personality, we can create processes. Like not everybody needs this. For instance, an achiever would, quite happy to work out and like to listen to podcasts while they're doing it, like to work out with people as long as their standards are really high. Socializers, for instance, no good setting them a task to walk on their own or do weights. They need a class, a gym class, a dance class. They love the social interaction. Peacemakers, like, they're methodical. They like dance, Pilates, where they can learn things over and over again. They hate being put on the spot if they're done something wrong.
Yep.
Because that's so they're very methodical and often hold themselves back. And competitors are just they're the ones with the high need for competitive sports and marathons and anything. Although my competitors who do nothing go marathons as if, but they love when you go back and look at as children, they love the highly competitive sports. They've just stopped playing them. So when you're setting up processes, you've got to work with your personality type. Most people are not going to do things. And that's the whole thing about it. It's about keeping your motivation levels high, your energy levels high. So for me, for instance, as a coach working with people, and I say to a socializer, you need to go for a walk every morning. And they go, it's boring. Yeah. Oh, no, I know you're a socializer. You need to go and join a group class or grab some friends and go for a walk. And they'll often keep walking because they love the conversation. So it's like, so when you're setting a task for yourself, you think, everybody says I should be doing this particular exercise, but it bores me to tears. Well, that's because it's not suited to your personality type.
Exactly.
So when you understand that, you go, oh, okay. So for me, for instance, as an achiever, I often, when I work out, I've got to have a goal to aim for. So I'm always setting these challenges. And right now it's Pilates, even though I don't particularly like working out my own. Pilates, for instance, works really because you can see yourself achieving every day. It gets a little bit better each day. And so that's what achievers need. That's something that they're kind of constantly aiming for. It's just fun. It's not about anything else other than just figuring out what makes you stay motivated and energized. and why we do things like eat, a peace advocate like you, if you're struggling with emotional eating, it's because you can't speak your truth.
Yeah.
You're trying to make everybody happy, so you don't speak your truth. You push everything down. Achievers like me, if I can't see a change happening quickly, I'm like, this doesn't work. I'm out of here. I'm done enough. So there's self-sabotage. So it's like when you understand that, you go, oh, that's why I'm doing that. Okay, so what do I need to do now? How do I need to fix that? Put those processes into place, and the way it goes.
Well, the best part about it, I found for me, was after doing the test and buying the book, was that I got all these bonus videos that have come in so handy. So they're short videos, I would say tapping scripts, if I'm not wrong.
Yeah,
and there was ones there that I need, like self-sabotage. You can explain a little bit more about what the bonus videos are, but I just absolutely love them. They're such a great handy tool to have when I don't have a session scheduled with you. I can just be like, I need this. Help me now, Sally.
Yeah, so we've got
on demand.
Procrastination, stress, self-sabotage. And I think procrastination is a big thing for many people, to understand why they're procrastinating. We tend to get very down on ourselves for procrastinating. There's always a reason for procrastination. It's got nothing to do with laziness. Yes. Nothing. In my experience, procrastination is fear of success. In my experience, in most cases, procrastination is fear of success. And so it could be fear of failure as well, but usually it's fear of success. So you then use the EFT around it to figure out, okay, what am I fearful of success? And again, it comes back to vulnerability and value and worth. And in my experience, most people that I work with, it's fear of success, not fear of failure. That's the biggest sabotager. And because what happens with the fear of success, the imposter syndrome comes up. Who do I think I am? What makes me think I can do this? What right do I have to be? And all my women, all my women, as they get to this level of success, like they're seeing it, they're almost there. Maybe they're making 50,000 more this year than they made last year, or they're just about to write that book, or people come to me about their weight and do a whole heap of other things, or they're just about to launch the business. Bam, up comes the imposter syndrome. Up comes, because it's the vulnerability. It's like you're finally moving into that space where you're being courageously authentic yourself. The real you, and that's scary.
Absolutely. Yes, there's that quote that, I absolutely love it. It's out of that movie, Coach Carter, and has always stuck with me and rings so true. What is it? My greatest fear is not that I'm inadequate. My greatest fear is that I'm powerful beyond measure. And it's all about letting your own light shine. And that's what terrifies people. What if I do get successful and I can't handle it?
Well, and because a whole heap of things have to change when you're successful. Number one is failure becomes more public. And it's a lot easier for us to fail privately. We'll pull back, oh, this happened or that happened or I couldn't. So we fail privately. Failing publicly is a very shameful thing to do, and no one wants to do it. So we pull back. But also it brings up all those things you were told as a child. Who do you think you are? What makes you think you're so special? You don't go being so smart. All those things. And then especially around the teenage years where, around about sort of 14, 15-year-old, where your friends would say, oh, what makes you think you look pretty? This is you. And, all that stuff about, and lots of stuff laid down in there. And that's all that happens. And that's what EFT does. It releases the emotional connection to a past memory. Because all that, as you're getting more successful, it goes, oh, I remember that time that they made fun of me and maybe I'm not good. When we tap, so you remember it, but you're like, oh, no big deal. And who were they anyway? They're nobody. One of the things I think I love in particular about working with you and some of the other people that I've worked with, when we go back and look at all the bully girls, the cool girls, they're doing nothing. They're doing nothing.
That is so true. Yes.
Yeah, and so many of those girls were mean like that. I mean, because of their own insecurity. They didn't believe they were good enough either. And they turned it on the person that they thought was, going to be better than them. And but yeah, and it all comes down, everything comes down to the authenticity, value and worth, and using tapping. And in the bonuses we've got tapping on the craving for bread and for chocolate, and for, I think, bread, chocolate, and chips, I think what I've done in there. And that's all about getting underneath what the food actually means, what it's trying to represent. It's food speaking for me that I can't speak for myself. And I mean, and the book is all about, I mean, it's sort of 30 years of this journey that I've been on. And, you know, as I said, you know, my driving factor was that I don't want girls now to have to live through what we went through. Yes. I don't think there'd be a woman my age with daughters who wouldn't say this exactly the same thing. We don't want our daughters to have to have gone through this. When I think of all, I could probably, I don't know, calculate over 400,000 hours of wasted thoughts on how I looked and what fat and should I eat this and I'm feeling fat. I mean, really, we could solve world peace. We could come up with a cure for COVID. If we stop thinking, you know, we could do great things, but our minds continually go that 20,000 odd negative thoughts a day about ourselves we have every single day. And when we stop that, everything changes.
I totally agree. And I feel like that's why I have decided to empower myself and speak out about the struggles that I'm having, because I've been a slave to these issues and this, I guess, disordered eating and disordered body image and self-shame and struggles for 12 years now. I don't want to continue on to have a family and pass this on to my kids. And I think by speaking out publicly about it, we can actually help other people not to go through it.
Absolutely. And you know, I think you have a really powerful role to play in this way we change, because, you know, we need people like you to say to others, you know what, you can be successful at any body shape. It's got nothing to do with your talent, your success, the way you love, it's got nothing to do with it. But we've got so hung up on the media narrative, and that's all it is. It's a media narrative about what's supposedly the perfect shape. And, you know, I just think the only way to change it is to change it within us. It's the only way you can change it. You can't expect them to change. We continue to buy the magazines, and we continue to watch the models, and we continue to do all the other things. We're continually buying into it. So more people like you, Cass, really do need to step up and say, there's more to life than this.
There sure is. And thank you very much. I appreciate it. I'm excited to be, you know, sharing my journey with you. Now, we have come to the end of the session, but I do have 3 quick questions for you that we always end with. So speaking of empowerment, I feel empowered when I speak my truth. And you know, this is making me feel empowered because I know I'm helping other people. So this is why I'm doing this new series. I would like to ask you, when do you feel most empowered?
Well, probably similar to you. I feel empowered when I see my clients just doing extraordinary things with their lives, you know, launching books or starting new businesses. You know, they come to me about weight and end up doing so many other wonderful things, because once that changes, it just frees them up to do. So that's really, you know, when I wake up every morning so grateful. Like, I just am so grateful to work with such extraordinary people like you. You know, to me, that's an absolute gift. I remember doing a reason why I do what I do, and it's so the rest of my life it made sense. And that's to be able to impart that experience to others and make others see that, or not help others see that. To me, that's how I feel empowered.
Well, you're definitely, I think, living your destiny right now. Definitely, I see big waves still in the future, so I'm excited to watch. But I would like to know, what is something that is left on your bucket list?
When you sent me this question, I'm like, oh, what's on my bucket list? Oh, I'm an achiever. It has to be something about my business. So yeah, I'd love, you know, I've had an Amazon best-selling book. I'd really like a New York Times best-selling book. That would be my bucket list, I think. And you know, that makes my heart sing. To do something that will make a difference. So that's my bucket list. I couldn't think of anything else.
I think that's a pretty amazing bucket list item. No shame in that one. I think it's definitely on the way. And first thing people can do is go onto your website and buy your book, Lighter. That's out now, right?
It's still on the online version at the moment, so people can buy it and download it straight onto their Kindle. So if they want to go and do the quiz, They can read more about it there.
I highly recommend it. All right, final question. If you could go back to your 15-year-old self, what would you tell her now?
Oh, don't cry over boys. They're not worth it. Don't cry over boys. I would also tell her, you know, that what people love most about you is who you are. That's what they love most about you. And that do what you love to do. Don't listen to anybody else. Don't listen to what people tell you there's no future in whatever. Do what you love. You know, my mother was a beautiful woman. She passed away many years ago now, and she was really a lovely, very nurturing person. And I wanted to go to NIDA when I was 15. And she said, that's not a job. Really? Now, I know where she was coming from, because it's not a job. there is, as you know, in your family, being involved in the film and television industry, it's not it's up and down, and that's what she was trying to say, get something behind you. But they took that forward as, oh, I mustn't be very good at it. So I would say, do what you love. You'll find what you love, who you are. You'll find things you do by doing what you love. Study what you love. But yeah, don't cry over any boy. That's just silly.
If only it were that easy. But yes, it all, when you're 15, feels like, no, this is the one.
This is the one. What did I see recently? A boy should mess up your lipstick, not your mascara.
Oh my God. All right, that needs to be my new motto in life.
Yep. If he makes you cry, he's not worth it. There you go.
Absolutely. If he calls you fat, he's also not worth it.
Not worth, gone.
Flag, gone.
And he's not going to change. If he judges you now, he's never. Don't think he's going to. You know that. You know, you can like be with him for a long time. Make sure you like him and he treats you well. Yeah.
Exactly. Well, thank you so much for your time, Sally, and for your continued guidance and investment in me and my career. So I thank you so much. Could you please just let everyone know the best place to find you if they want to work with you, if they want to watch your Facebook Live show as well?
Yes. So I have a Facebook Live every Saturday morning, Queensland time, in what I call the Living Lighter Facebook group. But people can access that through my Facebook page. My website is www.sallythibault, THIBAULT.com.au. And to access the quizzes on the front page of the website, or just /QUIZ, and they can access the quiz to find out who they are, and what makes their heart sing and where they get their energy and motivation. Make a huge difference.
It made a huge difference to me. My life is forever changed for the better. You've helped me through so much. So thank you for your time today, Sally. And I look forward to hopefully doing another session with you in the future for everyone. Oh,
thank you, Cass. It's just a delight to work with you. Thanks for having me.
Thanks, Sally.
Bye.
You're still here. Thank you so much for sticking around until the very end. I hope that you enjoyed today's episode as much as we enjoyed bringing it to you. I hope that this shows you a little bit about how what you see on social media is not always the full story, and we all have our own demons that we battle behind the scenes. If you struggle with eating, let us know your story in the comments down below. And if you have more things that you'd like me to share on these topics, let me know. Don't forget to subscribe to this channel and follow me on Instagram, Facebook at Cassidy La Creme, so you don't miss any updates. Now go spread some love to the women around you. And most importantly, don't forget to show a little love to yourself. If you don't, who else will? I'm Cassidy La Creme. I'm sending you so much love, and always know you are never alone. See you next time.